The browser may not be the most exciting area to talk about within Studio One, but it's important to develop a solid foundation in understanding how you can get around the browser, as well as some of its features and functions that are going to help you to stay in the zone when you're working on a song or a mix. So we've seen in a previous video that we can access the browser by clicking on the Browse button below here in the bottom right corner, just by clicking once. We can also use the function key F5 to show or hide the browser. And then we start on the home page and we can see in the center we have instruments, effects, and so on. And these tie in with the tabs up above. So if we click on effects, we're taken to that tab, but we can also directly click on the links up above. And back on the home tab at the bottom, we have re-index our presets, update plugins, and reset the blacklist. Now the blacklist is going to be a list of plugins or VSTs that have been problematic when in use in Studio One. So if you want to reset those to have Studio One launch them again once you start, just click on this button here. So let's move on to the Instruments tab, and we can see we can choose from a variety of areas here. We can access multi-instruments to load in, note effects, and favorites, and recent. Now these are grouped by vendor currently, but we can choose up at the top how we would like these to show by flat, folder, type, or again our vendor. So let's take a look within the Personas folder, and we can see all of our instruments that are available. I'm using Studio One Professional, so these are what are available for me. If you're using Artist or Prime, what you have is going to vary. So from here, we can click on an instrument and simply drag that into our range view, and an instrument track is going to be created, and our impact will be loaded here, direct and ready for loading our sounds. And here's the instrument track that is created. Now we could also expand out, say, the My Tai here, and we can see the individual patches that are available, and we can drag a patch in, and that will automatically be loaded as well. I'll go ahead and close that out. And let's close that folder up. Now the next tab that we have is the Effects tab. And again, if I expand out the Personas folder, we can see all of our effects, which are pretty plentiful in the professional version. Now, if you notice, each of these and the VST instruments have these thumbnail icons. If we'd prefer just to see text representations of our instruments, we can click this icon there, and then we can have the text represent our effects and instruments as well. But I'm going to go ahead and click and turn that back on. Also worth mentioning is that at the bottom, I have a third-party section here for Tokyo Dawn Labs, and this one does not have a thumbnail image. If I'd like to add a thumbnail image to an effect or instrument, we can drag that in, and then while it's loaded, what we see here, we can click on the down arrow and then choose to update plugin in thumbnail. And we can see now we have a visual representation of our Slick EQ. I'll close that out. Let's move on to the Loops tab. And depending on which version of Studio One you have, that's going to determine how much content that you have within this area. But it's good to have an idea of how to find your way around in here, because if you have a lot of loops, it can become troublesome to find what you're looking for. So this is why we have the sort by up at the top, and these work in tiers. So the first tier is going to be style, and we can see we're looking at our different styles here. If I were to change this though to say instrument, then now we can see these are listed by instruments. So that's how we start with this top tier. Now if I expand out the, let's say the guitar, we can see we have blues, classical, and so on, and that's because we have style chosen. Now, we could use product, and then we can see these are sorted by product. If I expand out the big fish, we then have vendor. I could choose, say, style, and now we have the different styles. So you can see how these work nested together, and having an understanding of how to use these will help you find what you're looking for when you're working on a track. One last thing that I'd like to mention about this area and all other tabs as well is we have this information pane. So when we have a folder or file selected, this is going to update to give us more information on what it is that we are looking at the moment. So here I have this loop selected, and now this actually opens up the Audition panel, so I can play this back, stop, have it loop. If this is active, it's going to loop over and over. Now this icon, when it is selected, your loop will play back to the current song tempo that we have here, so 120. So even if this is 70 BPM, for instance, it's going to play back at our song tempo as long as we have this checked. If we don't want that behavior, we can just deselect it. Now, all the way to the right, we have volume for our Audition. We then have information about the file that is selected. We can see the sample rate, the bit depth, the BPM. If the file has BPM data encoded, it's going to show here. So if you're trying to work with a file that is not stretching or compressing right in your song, you can always take a look to see if it even has BPM data encoded. We have its length and the type of file. Okay, so just keep in mind that panel is there and it's going to give you information about whatever you're taking a look at. And so let's next move on to the Files tab. Now the Files tab is going to allow you to access all of your audio files and samples on your system. So we start at the top with these two tabs, Files and Studio One. Now my audio files, my sound folder is on my desktop actually. So I'm going to come to the Quanta and then Sounds and Samples. This is the folder where I save all of my sounds and samples, as the name implies. If we don't want to dig down like that each time we come to the Files tab, we can just simply navigate to that area. I'll right click and then I'll choose the New tab from here. And then we can see we have a new tab that will take us directly to our sample folder. So now if I come back to Files and then move to a different tab, when I come back to Files, I can just click Sounds and Samples. Boom. There's all of my audio samples and loops. Now next in line we have Cloud, and this we can get on the web here and we can go to the PreSonus shop, do some shopping if you would like some new extensions for Studio One, and do that all within Studio One. The PreSonus Exchange, you can exchange presets, grooves, macros, all sorts of things with other Studio One users and have that all done within Studio One. Then we have SoundCloud. So if you've set up a SoundCloud account with Studio One, you can access that here. Next in line, we have the pool, and this is going to be the container for all of the audio samples that we're using, third-party audio samples, and any audio recordings that we have done. Say if you've tracked a vocalist, then those files will be saved here. Now, let me just come to the loops folder, and I'm going to bring in this loop here, come back to the pool, and we can see that that has been added to the pool. And even if I delete this from the arrange view, it still remains in the pool, and we can always bring that back in. If we right click on the items within this folder, there's a variety of different options. So if you want to remove it from the pool, you can show it in your Explorer or the Finder window on the Mac. We can refresh, locate missing files, remove unused files, copy external files, and show media folder in Explorer. So there's a lot of things that you can do here, and this menu will vary a little bit depending on the type of file that you have selected. And again, at the bottom, we have an information panel or audition panel, so we can listen back to our samples that are contained within the pool. Now, the final thing I'd like to mention, and almost forgot about the browser, is that for each tab, we have a search function here. And so if we have the, say, effects active, I can click on the search and we're going to search within the effects tab. So if I'm looking for a reverb, I can just start to type reverb, and we can see we have 3 results that show up here for PreSonus. And even if it is not named a reverb, so this has reverb in the name, but open air, this is a convolution reverb. This has been tagged apparently. So that's, even if your reverb that you're looking for doesn't have it in the title or it's not named as such, if it's tagged, then it's going to show up here. To clear that search, I could just click on the X there. And if we'd like to close that search box, just click on the magnifying glass up above. Okay, so that was a look at the browser, and I hope that you gained some useful information. Again, having a better understanding of getting around in here and getting it set up as you'd like is going to help you in your music production and mixing.